Alright, I'm going to work the first 6 problems on your multiplying decimals worksheet. Number 1 is 4 2/10 times 6. So to write this problem, I'm going to write it just as if it was 42 times 6. When we're multiplying decimals, we really don't have to worry about the decimal until the end of the problem. Now, if you notice, if 6 had a decimal, it would go right here, and my decimals are not lined up. With multiplication, that is okay. So I'm going to multiply this just as if it was 42 times 6. Alright, 6 times 2 is 12, 4 times 6 is 24, plus 1 is 25. So we get 252. We don't know whether that's 252, 25 and 2/10, 2 and 52 hundredths, or 252 thousandths. Now, we can think of 4 and 2/10 times 6 as pretty close to 4 times 6, which would be 24. And because it's 4 and 2/10 times 6, it's going to be more than 24. So the only place that makes sense to put the decimal would be right here. I'm sorry. Right, that would not make sense because it would be 2 and 52 hundredths. It's going to go right here. Okay, and the trick to figuring that out is by counting in your factors how many decimal place values there are. So if I look at 4 and 2/10, I have 1 decimal place value. 2 is in the 10th place. On my 6, there are no decimal place values. So I have 1 decimal place value. So I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to move my decimal 1 time to the left because of my 1 decimal place value. So that leaves the answer as 25 and 2/10. Alright, number 2 is 5 times 3 and 45 hundredths. Now remember, when we're multiplying, it doesn't matter what order you put things in. So you can do it this way, or if you prefer, you can put the 3 and 45 hundredths on top. I actually prefer it this way. I'm not going to use it that way. Okay, so I'm just going to multiply this as if it was 345 times 5, and then we'll worry about the decimal. So go ahead and multiply. Alright, now let's figure out where we put the decimal. Look at both of your factors. Start with 3 and 45 hundredths. And if you look, you have 2 numbers in the decimal place value. You have the 4 and the 5. So there's 2 decimal place values. With 5, your second factor, there are no decimal place values. So we're going to take our decimal, we're going to start it right here, and we're going to move it 2 times to the left. So 1, 2. So that leaves your answer as 17 and 25 hundredths. Alright, we have 3 and 5 hundredths times 2 and 3/10. So I'm going to write this out, 3 and 5 hundredths times 2 and 3/10. Notice again, my decimals are not lined up, and that is okay. We're going to multiply this as if it's 305 times 23. So go ahead and multiply. Alright, we get 7015. Now let's figure out where the decimal is placed. Okay, in our first factor, 3 and 5/10, I have 1, 2 numbers in the decimal place values. And on 2 and 3/10, I have 1. So that's a total of 3 decimal place values. So we're going to take our decimal and we're going to move it 1, 2, 3. So that makes your answer 7 and 15 thousandths. Right, on number 4, we have 5 7/100 times 6/10. I'm going to write my problem. 5 7/100 times 6/10. Decimals do not need to be lined up. We're going to multiply this as if it's 507 times 6. Now, let's think about this problem. We start with 5 7/10 and we're multiplying it by 6/10. So we only want 6/10 of 5 7/100. So our product is actually going to be less than our factor, our first factor. So in 5 7/100, I have 1, 2 decimal place values, and in 6/10 there is 1. So that's a total of 3. So start your decimal on the far right and count 1, 2, 3. So the answer is 3 and, 40. Let me erase that. It's going to be 3 and 42 thousandths. All right, number 4 is 24 times 325 thousandths. I'm going to write my number that's longer, that has more digits on the top, just because that's how I like my multiplication to look. Okay, we're going to look at this as 325 times 24. Check that. All right, I get my product as 7800. In my first factor, 325 thousandths, I have 1, 2, 3 numbers in the decimal place values, and on 24 there are not any. So we have a total of 3. So 1, 2, 3. That makes your answer 7 8/10. All right, number 6, 752 times 1 2/10. We're going to multiply this just as if it was 752 times 12. So go ahead and multiply. Now figure out where the decimal goes. 752, you don't have any decimal place values. On 1 2/10, you do have 1. So your answer is going to be 902 4/10.